Just another moment. I have to let Mr. Moore in.
Who's coming, Mr. Moore?
Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Marcus, is your client going to be logging in?
Hi, my name is Karen Taylor. I'm Lori Stalowitz's sister. I'm the daughter of Beverly Klein and Sid Klein. Lori is actually moving today out of her house in Stanford, so she didn't know she'd be able to make it.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Karen, you're pinch hitting for your sister. Thank you.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Mr. Hanna,
Yes.
we're recording live on YouTube. You may begin anytime you wish.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals. We hold its meeting hosted on Zoom, March 24, 2022, 7 p.m. We start with a roll call. Mr. Moore.
Present.
Mr. Sibbett.
Present.
Mr. Rivas.
Present.
Mr. Ribeiro.
Present.
All right, we have 5 members. We move to accept the minute from March 10, 2022. Can I have a motion for that?
I make a motion to accept the minutes of March 10, 2022.
Any second?
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next regular meeting will be April 14, 2022. This public hearing have no new application. We have a continued public hearing, 22-03, 11 Jeffrey Street. We have a motion to open that hearing.
Make a motion that we open and continue application 22-03 11 Jeffrey Street.
Okay.
Stalowicz, Lori, RA 20 zone.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anyone representing the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's Neil Marcus, Conewall PC 158 Deer Hill Avenue on behalf of the applicant. And the matter was continued from the meeting of March 10th. And my notes said that we had 4 items that we felt we needed to address to to revise the plan to reflect what we had discussed at that meeting, and to answer a few of the questions from the board members that with information that was not available to us on the 10th. So the first thing is I sent a letter to the chair, which is dated today's date, March 24th, and actually it's a revised letter. And I'm going to read it real quick because it sort of summarizes where I think we are. Dear Chairman Hanna, as a follow-up to the first session of the public hearing on the above referenced application, I'm enclosing a revised map that shows the current status of the variances that are currently being requested. As you will recall, the request for a variance for a carport on the southwest corner of the building at the street line has been eliminated. And I'm going to stop there and go off the letter for a second. We talked and Lori acknowledged at the last meeting that we would withdraw what I'll call the second carport, which was if you were facing the house from the street to your immediate left, and was pretty much right on Jeffrey Street. So that is no longer a variance that we're requesting because that portion of the project is gone. Continuing in the letter, as a result of that, of eliminating that, the building coverage on the lot will not be increased as much as originally proposed, and no variance will be needed. We're getting above the 20% coverage that we were allowed. So the original application was to vary that regulation. That request has been withdrawn. The building coverage is not in excess of what's allowed in the zone. Moving on in my letter, accordingly, there's no reason to seek a variance for that coverage. The only variances that are currently being sought will allow the construction of a new front porch. And again, I'm going to stop. I indicate approximately 75 square feet. The question, and Juan, I think, asked that specifically, what's the size of that front porch? And it's 6.5 feet, 6 feet by 12.5 feet, which comes out to just about 75 square feet. And that has a setback of 18 feet from the roof overhang to the street. And that would be the variance to allow it to be at 18 feet. And additionally, 14.5 feet from the roof overhang to the side yard. So those are the two variances that allow us to add this small porch to the front, keeping in mind that the house itself is currently 15.9 feet from Jeffrey Street. So the front yard of the house is 15.9, and the request is 18 feet. So we're behind where the front yard currently exists, but it requires a variance because it's new construction. The second variance is to allow the construction of a new carport along the easterly side of the property where an old structure has existed. And I think Chairman Hanna said that when his site visit, he saw the remains of an old carport on the side of the house. If you saw that, you would see that the old carport was forward on the lot closer to the street. What we have done is we've decided to build a new carport, but to move it back towards the rear of the house. So it doesn't have as much impact on the streetscape, but yet, as we discussed at the last meeting, we didn't move it so far back as to impact our neighbors on the east with their view of Lake Wabika, which would be across the backyard of the subject property. So that's the discussion. The reason that that we thought that the old carport was either dilapidated or abandoned or disrepaired is that carport was actually a block structure with a steel frame, and it was covered by a canopy. The canopy has been taken down and is in the basement. So it was a structure that was only permanent at its foundation, but it had a temporary cover that was taken off when it was not in use. So the new carport will be, as I say, located further back, and that requires a variance on the side yard as requested. And that's it'll be 3 feet on that side. Then there were some questions by one of the neighbors on the western side of the property, and they were wondering why the corner of the house as it exists today is only approximately 1.5 feet from their property line. And there was some discussion, again, Lori Stolwitz indicated that there had been a kitchen fire sometime in the early 80s, and that the property had been rebuilt. I have filed with the assistance of Mary Larkin, and you have it now in your file, the history of that rebuild. It goes back to 1982, and it was built in accordance with a valid building permit and resulted in a valid CO. There is no certificate of occupancy for the original house because in 1952, when it was built, the city of Danbury didn't issue COs. By the way, very few of the towns around here were issuing COs back then. But in the 82 renovation, it was performed with proper permits and it was given a CO. And that set the current corner in the back of the house. And we're not touching that. We are going to go up with a second story above it, but on the existing foundation. Those were the questions. I had those 4 questions that came out of the hearing of the 10th. In the file, as I say, you have a updated survey that was the zoning location survey prepared by Gail Adams, and it's signed by her, meets the requirements, and it shows essentially the 2 variances that are being sought, the new carport and the front porch. The rest of the material that was requested is all now in the file as well. So at the last hearing, you heard a lot more because we were looking for a lot more. This is we simplified this. And of course, the reasons that we gave for the hardship that requires the variance haven't changed. The property is, again, an old non-conforming lot. It's undersized in the RA20 zone, as are all the lots up Lake Wabeeka. And these houses were built at a point in time where side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, and rear yard setbacks weren't a matter of anybody's concern. So they are all pretty much non-conforming with respect to today's zoning regs. The lot, as we have indicated, is narrow along the street line. It's on the curve of the street. It's longer towards the backyard towards the north, which is land of the Lake Wabeeka Association, which in fact is the shore of the lake itself. We have sufficient backyard setback. Rear yard is not a problem. There's an existing stone wall which our neighbor was concerned was in disrepair, and the Stalowitzes have agreed that they will repair it and put it back together where it has fallen down and reestablish that is a boundary between the 2 properties, even though it wanders in and out of the official boundary. It's an existing stone wall that'll be continued. At this point, I hope that we've answered all the questions of the commission, but I'm going to cut off my presentation here and wait and see if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them. And I will also listen to any further comments from the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
The carport you do on the side of the house, is that can be the same frame, or it's gonna a different frame, or what? What is it? It's gonna be pipes and canopy over?
No, it's going to be a more permanent structure. It'll have a fixed roof, but again, it'll have an open side. It's carport.
It will be attached to the house or no?
No, it will not. It is just set off from the house by about 2 feet. It'll be at the corner as shown on the site plan, but there's no reason to attach it.
Okay. The second question is I have here, it came us to our attention that this property, 1982, got a variance from the west side to put that addition at 10 feet away, whatever it is. They got a variance to build at 4 feet from the property line at that corner. which is now the 1.6 feet. I don't know how the CO was given to there, or as they indicate before they have a fire and they rebuild and they put a little addition in that corner. Is that
Yeah.
true?
That's my understanding, yes.
And so why they were granted a variance 4 feet from the property line and they built at 1.6 feet?
Yeah, my understanding is that that is a surveyor's discrepancy between what the old survey showed is that property line, that the house was built where it was approved, but in fact, the property line was not where it had been depicted. Again, I don't have that old map available to me, but that's what has been explained, that the property, that the corner is where it was shown, but the property line itself was in the wrong place. They appear to be off by about 2.5 feet. That's the best explanation. But as you recall, Sean Harity at the last meeting said that at this point in time, the property that what was a non-conforming structure, it would have been at 4 feet, is still a non-conforming structure at 1.6, and that it's a non-issue for him because it's existed without any action on the part of the city, and it's been signed off by the department for so many years. I mean, he said it's been 40 years, and the statute is 6 years. So, from his perspective, it's not. I think he indicated to the commission last meeting that it's not really an issue. But I'd like you to all be assured that the application that's before you does not impact that corner of the house. I mean, we're not seeking to do anything back there. What was rebuilt in '82 is still going to be there.
Could I ask a question? My name is Lois Yeager. I'm the president of the Lake Wabeeka Association. So that corner that's in question, I know that you're not looking to expand any farther out on that, but you're adding a second story on that section of the home, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Excuse me 1 second. Who's that? Now we gotta go in order with that hearing. All right. Let's see. We gotta start with the board members for the questioning, and then we go to who is opposing, who is supporting the application.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of your process.
Well, we will get to you in a second, okay?
Okay, thank
We
you.
want to see if any of the board members have any question to Mr. Marcus.
All right, I have, can you see this plot plan up there? I'm sharing it temporarily here. Can you, okay.
We can see it, Rod.
Okay, excuse me. We now are down to 1, 2, 3. Obviously, number 4 is going on the southwest corner of the property, that additional parking spot. So, Mr. Marcus, just to be sure it's totally clear in my mind, you're down to requesting 2 variances.
Yes.
So if you wouldn't mind just enunciating them again one more time with the pieces that you're talking about up here on the screen. Because we've got, well, number 1 now is not requiring any kind of a variance, is it? That's the second story?
No, that does not. It
Okay.
was never a request in the first place.
All right. All right. So then 2 and 3, just, it looks like you've got 3, a side and a front, and then another front, or just clarify if you would for me, please.
So we have, yeah, I will, Rod. I'll do this. So the first is there's a porch that is along the front of the building, and it's a cross-hatched area.
Okay.
It's a 6 feet by 12.5 feet. It's a total of 75 square feet, and it's filling in that notch in the foundation.
Okay.
And that is located 18 feet from the front property line which is the first variance.
Okay,
And then the car, on the same structure, on the side yard, we are at 14.5 feet
all right,
from the corner side yard. So that I would say the two of those are a variance for the construction of an entry porch. The second
Okay.
one is the replacement of the carport, again, along the easterly property line. And we show that it's going to be essentially located 3 feet from that property line.
okay. So carport pretty much, maybe not precisely, but pretty much fits the number 2 hashed box, correct?
Exactly. And by the way, if you were to go look at the existing carport that's not on the map, but it's basically the new carport is taking the existing foundation and dragging it back to the northeast by about 6 or 7 feet.
Okay. All right, so it may be a matter of semantics, but you really need 3 variances. One is attaches to the one little porch, the front yard and the
Yep.
side yard, and then the one side yard setback for the carport, correct?
That is it. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And again, when we started, it was a lot more ambitious because of the second carport that's gone and the coverage issue that created. That's gone.
All right. I'll stop sharing for now. I do have another question as well, though. In looking at the building plans, the building sketch,
Yes.
it shows currently on the ground floor 3 bedrooms, and then the addition will have an office and a 4th bedroom, a master bedroom. How can we reconcile 4 bedrooms on that lot with septic and on that lot in particular? I'm not quite sure how
Well, one
we can do that.
one bedroom will be eliminated because that'll become just an additional office space because they're going to be limited by septic to the
Mhm.
to the property. The health code will limit them.
So there'll be no net change, 3 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. Is that correct?
That's the plan.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question concerning safety. With the new carport location, it cuts off all access to the backyard from the street for any emergency vehicle that may have to get in there for a fire or any type of emergency in the backyard. You know, should an ambulance be required to come for some reason, there's no access to the backyard.
Yeah, again, there has not, I mean, the access to the backyard, Mike, hasn't changed. But there hasn't been vehicular access for years. Seriously, it was even worse when the carport was further up. You couldn't get around it then. But now at least you can get back
But
to an
you
area.
just stated that the carport's going to be 2 feet from the corner of the house and 3 feet from the side yard.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, stretcher for an ambulance is a little wider than 2 feet, and they'd have to go around into somebody else's yard to access that. And there's a stone wall there, so you've got more restrictive area. And then on the other side of the house, you got 1.5 feet. So you're telling me if somebody has a heart attack or something in the backyard, how emergency services are going to get back there?
And to Mr.
Yeah,
Sivet's point, if I may add, there's still a tree in the front yard that last meeting wasn't decided on if it was going to get cut down or left there. So now not only are we talking about 2 feet from the house with this carport, but we also have a tree in the way.
Yeah.
No, there's no carport in the front of the house. That tree won't be affected. I went out there the other day and looked at this whole thing. I'm
The
just
plan was
concerned
not to take
about
down-
access for safety purposes, because my wife has had to go to the hospital several times this year, and they've struggled on occasion to get the stretcher in my house, and I've got a 3-foot door. So
Yeah, Mike,
we're in somebody's backyard.
I agree. And what we will do, because you're concerned, right now, is to say there really is no access because you got the backyard is the same. You got a foundation for a carport on the easterly side, and on this westerly side, you can't get between the stone wall in the corner of the property without basically going onto the neighbor's property over the stone wall. Now I got to tell you that the Klein family has lived in this house since 1952, and it's not been a problem for them for the last literally 70 years.
They
This
haven't
was
had a
not a
carport
problem.
there for 70 years.
No. But clearly since 1982, which is only 40 years, the
And they
configuration.
had a fire then.
Yep, and that was. And by the way, Sid Klein, as I recall, was a retired New York fireman. But
What difference does that make?
the guy who would be concerned about fire safety to the rear of his house. The fact of the matter is, the house is so close to the road that accessing the rear of the house with hoses and ladders and stuff is not all that difficult. But I'm going to suggest, if this is a concern, that a condition of approval is that there's access through the carport to the back of the house. So basically, if you have to go through, we got to keep open access for emergency purposes through the carport at all times. And we'll do that if that's a concern. Because I don't know that it is a concern for my client because they've lived this way for so many years. But we would make that a condition of approval that we have to allow access for emergency services through the carport. And that's what we'll do.
So
Because
that's,
Sounds good.
that means you're gonna make the carport bigger?
No, it means that we have to have an opening in the back. That the carport has to have a front opening and a rear opening.
It's gonna be bigger.
Yeah, well, not big. No, not bigger. No. Look, you have to take the car out, obviously. So if you know,
Because the fire truck.
if you're gonna call an ambulance, you got to pull your car out and let the ambulance get through. But you know, the ambulance aren't that quick.
The ambulance is a bigger car than a regular car, need more space. Isn't it?
Well, again, the problem is I'm not sure that an ambulance would really want to get through. If they wanted to pick up somebody, it would probably be on a stretcher. In that, you could get through the carport.
Okay.
But again, we'll make, as a condition of the approval, we'll make sure that emergency personnel have access to the rear of the property. And that will do. But right now, it doesn't exist anyway. We're going to improve the situation. We'll do it.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Looking at the plans here, I just want to kind of, with what Mr. Commissioner Moore was talking about, just kind of confirm the variances being requested as far as the front side, the front or the side setback when it comes to the porch here. So my understanding is you're going to go, it's currently 18 feet from the front setback to the roof overhang, and you're requesting that to reduce that to 2 feet.
No. Let me start again. If the front yard variance is a variance to 18 feet.
Okay.
18 feet from the current requirement. And That's for the new porch, though the rest of the house is already at 15.9 feet. So we're not going to make the house more non-conforming on the front yard. We're just gonna add a porch.
Understood. Okay. All right.
On the side yard, we're gonna have a 14.5-foot side yard setback for the same porch. And right
Okay.
now, the closest side yard is 16.1. So we're gonna increase the side yard non-conformity by approximately 1.5 feet.
Okay. Understood. I just
That's
wanted to
the porch.
clarify.
And then the rest of it is just the carport. We need to go to 3 feet, which is basically what we have now for the existing carport. But since it's a new carport, we need a variance.
Understood, but that's a detached accessory. I'm more concerned about the attached accessory or addition.
You got
Okay.
it. The carport's detached accessory, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Any more question from the board? Okay, anybody in support for this application? Look like no. You want to say something or you just want to smile?
Well, I am in support, obviously, but I guess just one or two things I could mention in case they're helpful. Right now, the house is a house that was, as you've heard, built in the 1950s when the community was first formed. The house did burn down substantially and was rebuilt in 1982, as you heard. And since then, honestly, there has not been much done to improve the house. The house is not gorgeous. The house is just a functional house right now. The plans will make this house much more attractive and improve the neighborhood. So hopefully people would appreciate that as opposed to the way it looks now. This house has been in our family since my dad and the firemen founded the community. We're anxious to keep it in the family. With my sister moving there, my mom is, going to turn it over to her. And she wants to make it livable, obviously, for her. And that's the purpose of these renovations.
So you are supporting your sister, correct?
I am very much supporting my sister, and it's a house that has huge sentimental value to us because of the history. And we want to keep it in the family that way.
We just want to know for the record who you are. Okay. Anyone else in support? Anyone in opposition to this application? All right. Tell us what you have in your mind. Ms. Stressner.
Hi, everyone. Can I share my screen? Would that be okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. See if I can do this. Yeah, this should do it. Okay. Okay, I tried to set up a little bit of a document so you can understand my concerns. Going back to 1982, I took the documents that Mr. Marcus has provided and I set it up as a timeline. And as you can see by the timeline, very odd things happen in a 3-month period. For example, on June 4th, 1982, the building department record said that there was a repair being done for fire damage and a 10x12 addition, which I believe was the kitchen addition, which is where this northwestern non-conforming corner is the issue. It mentions on that document, if you guys all have it, or I can show it to you if anyone else has it, says that the side yard is 15 plus feet and it's using existing footings, which makes absolutely no sense because if you're adding an addition, how can you have it using the existing footings if it's an addition? And at the time, the side yard was 7 feet. So that was the first thing that was incorrect on June 4th. On June 28th, the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, applied for the variance. for the westerly side yard for 4 feet to extend the foundation so they could access the cellar from the outside due to a new septic system, and they needed the ability to enter the basement from outside and extend the foundation wall. Okay. I'm not sure why they needed to access the cellar from the outside, since they have steps in the inside to access the cellar, but that was what they asked for. And on August 12th, they got the variance granted. And the interesting thing on the variance, it was a very fancy written variance. They granted the variance, but they had to provide adequate buffering of hemlocks or evergreens, which there are not. The shape of the lot and the contour of the property prevents from building differently, which is not the case. It will be a definite upgrade into the neighborhood. Why would building a cellar door in the back of someone's house on closer to someone's property be an upgrade to the neighborhood? No due harm will be affected by granting of this variance. Well, that I'm not gonna give you my opinion. Ledge in one area of the property with the septic in the rear. Okay, so the variance was granted. Then on 9/24, a certificate of occupancy approving the occupancy, not the building structure, not the approval of the addition, was signed. They didn't mention the addition. It doesn't mention that they did a 10 by 12. How did they do a 10 by 12 addition if they had a side yard of 7 feet? It doesn't make any sense. None of these documents, as they happened, make any sense if you put them together. Something was going on, and we don't know what it was. It's very unclear, based on the documents provided, what was going on and why we ended up with this 18-inch nonconformity on this corner. Now, it may be true that the map wasn't correct, but we don't know that. We know that they said they had a 7 foot side yard and they were making it 4. But we don't know any of this because none of those building permits are available. I'm sure if the applicant goes through their records, they may be able to find them. Nonetheless, we don't have them. And the timeline is very odd because the applicants they knew what they were doing. It was almost like they were meshing two things together to get the best what they wanted or something like that. I have no idea. So let's talk about non-conforming use. And I know Mr. Hardy said at the last meeting, but it's not really a 2-story, it's not a 1-story increase. This building, based on how it sits on the property, at the point where it's non-conformity, 18 inches from my property, it's a full basement walkout. So it's at least 10 feet of basement. Then we have the first floor, and now they want to build a second floor. So to me, that's 3 floors. This property also is at least 6 feet higher at grade than my house. And I'm going to jump to this picture that I have at the end of so here's the house and here's my house. So it starts off 6 feet higher, then it has a basement, then it has a first floor, and now it's going to have a second floor. So it's going to go up, like the whole house will be like 37 feet higher than my house. It's going to be a towering house, and the property line is here with no barriers ever put in by the applicant. So let me go back. So let's talk about non-conforming. The house at 11 Jeffrey sits 5 to 6 feet higher on the ground than our home. No non-conforming structure may be extended or expanded in such a way that the non-conformity of the structure is increased. Now, I know I can hear the other arguments back and forth, but in my feeling is that a non-conformity that's going to go up 37 feet above my head, towering over my house, is extending a non-conformity. The applicant has not provided the plans, what happened in 1982. There's minimal information of why they didn't follow the 4-foot variance. And frankly, bad actors should not be rewarded for not complying with the rules. There is no hardship if the applicant follows the 4-foot variance on their new addition and sets back the 3rd floor so it doesn't tower over our home. To allow the applicant to build another floor on top of the non-conforming area will have many negative effects on my home. It will have loss of light and air. As you could see, it's on the easterly side of my building. The sun goes over the property like this. We get no sun on this side of our property because the building this is the property line. So we will have even less possibilities of any easterly sunlight because of the increased height of the property of the applicant's home. It will create a darker, wetter side yard for us. We have a 15-foot side yard. My property does not have a variance and doesn't have a shortened side yard. The purposes of setbacks are so that neighboring property owners can enjoy light and air between the properties. That's why you buy a house. Otherwise, you could live in an apartment. Based upon the limited paperwork and timeline submitted paperwork, it appears that the nonconformity was deliberate. The applicant was aware of the necessary paperwork that was needed, but chose a different path. The adding a 3rd floor, which is what we feel it is, in the back of the house, will decrease the property value of our home and crowd us in. Also, how is this work going to get done? Are they going to have to set up, work on our property to build this 3rd floor? What happens with every time the gardener comes, they're going to have to be working on our property to garden on the other side? What about if they have to repair the side of the house? They'll be on our property. If a person cannot do work within 18 inches of a building. So the applicant will continue to use our property in order to access the corner of their own property for gardening, for working, and even to walk around their house. Construction within 18 inches of our property will cause unnecessary hardship for us. We are entitled to a peaceful use of our property without a towering house 18 inches away from the property line. And my final words again, bad actors should not be rewarded.
Oh my God.
Does anybody have any questions for me?
I have a question for you. You were living in your house in 1982?
No.
No, I bought the house 5 years ago.
And so the people were there, apparently didn't complain about the
Well,
variance.
they did complain, and you can talk to Lois and there are other people in the community who were there before me. But my point is when I bought the house, I saw that nonconformity, but now they're going up another 12 feet.
The bottom line is they're not asking for a variance for if we deny this whole variance, they still can go up a floor because they're perfectly within their rights. That's not what they're asking.
But they're bad actors. They did it on purpose. They didn't follow the rules. Why did they get a variance and then do 1.6 feet? Why did they go and do the effort of a variance and then not follow the variance that they applied for? Do you have?
Well, none of us here know the answer to that, and because it was 40 years ago. But all I'm saying is that the height of the second floor addition has nothing to do with what they're actually proposing today. They can do that without
Can I
it.
respond to a few of the points that were made and give a little more context?
So you
The
can,
family that lived next
can you,
door.
please, can you hold on a little bit? Let's finish the discussion here. You'll talk on your turn. Go ahead, Mr. Rivera, finish.
That's all I'm saying. The variances they're asking for are for the front porch and the carport. They even if we deny those variances, they can still do the second floor addition.
Right.
And I hear what you're saying 100%, but that's not what they're coming to this board for. So
Well, they're bringing it up and it's on the pictures and on the maps. And, you know, here's my chance to give you my feelings about it because it's the only opportunity I'm going to have.
yep. No,
And just to kind of mirror off of Mr. Commissioner Rivera, it's unfortunate that it went unchecked for 40 years, but the variances, like he said, that we're here for, even if we were to deny, it would be out of our hands for them to continue the construction that is proposed as far as the second story. And you know, unfortunately, I wish we could do something about it, but it's out of our hands.
Okay, Ms. Taylor, you can go ahead with your.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few observations. Some interesting history about the property. When the house was built in the 1950s, our backyard was actually, I don't know, something like 10 or 15 feet lower than it is right now. When the house was rebuilt in 1982, in order to satisfy septic field issues, we couldn't dig down because of mountain and rock. And so instead of being, couldn't dig down, so they raised the level of the backyard to create the appropriate septic field. So we used to have a deck in the backyard that used to be a full flight of stairs off the ground. And right now the deck is like one step off the ground. The one area you saw with that door to the basement is the only place where the backyard is still at the original level. There's kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but almost like an alcove there. And then you have to go up a flight of stairs, wooden stairs that you couldn't see in that picture to get to the rest of our backyard. That one door is the only place that's still at the level of the original backyard. Our prop, it's a mountain. The property up there, if you drive around, you see all sorts of elevations and low areas and high areas. So the fact that our property is higher than the neighbor to our left has always been the case. The property just is. Another point to be made, there were hemlocks that were put there and some owner along the way removed them. I remember the discussion with the Fidels, who were the original owners of that house, and they agreed on what kind of plants. I don't remember if they were hemlocks per se or some other kind of plants, but there were plants put on the border, and some other owner of the property next door removed them. Yeah. There has never been any. There was an implication that people doing work on our house would go onto the neighbor's property. That has not happened in 70 years and will never happen. So that's not an issue. Another thing that I would comment on is there is walkway on that side of the house, and that walkway won't change because the footprint of the house isn't changing. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned in terms of the height of the house has an attic. You can stand in that attic. You couldn't see it from the angle of that particular photo, but there's a drop-down staircase and you can go up and stand in the attic. Obviously not at every corner, but there are places in the attic where you can stand. So by taking the attic away and making a second floor, yes, there will be some increase to height, but it's not like we're adding completely a second floor. What was the attic will be the original piece of the second floor. And as you've all discussed, there's no variance needed to add the second floor. So, and I don't know, I'll stop talking, but I hope that helps. I think Neil already spoke to the 4 feet versus 1.6 feet. It is what it is. The boundaries apparently were unclear, but it's been that way since 1982.
I just like to respond.
You go ahead, you can respond.
Okay, now look at these are your drawings. The house is going to be much taller, as you can see. It's not going to, because the roof line would have gone down this way. It's not going to be like that. So it's going to be much taller. That's number one. Number two, you have 18 inches at this corner. I am not suggesting that people are standing around not being respectful of our property, but you explain to me how you're going to build up this side of this wall here and redo this area without using a ladder, because ladders need to be 18 inches, away from the building to lean. So how are they going to not be on our property to do the work? That's kind of a silly thing to say, unless you have some magical way of building, like what are they going to hang down from the ceiling? The roof? I don't know. Secondly, your family did not own the property in 1950. Your family provided a deed. Your parents owned the property in 1968.
No. My father built the roads up there. He bought the mountain with a group of Jewish firemen who bought the mountain.
But
he had one of the original houses in the 1950s. So all of that seems
he bought it from Mr. Bick.
Chairman, can we get a point of order? Can we get a point of order, please?
Can we have an order in the meeting, please? Let everybody take turn to talk, and let's not get out of order.
The property was bought in 1968 from Mr. Irving Bick.
But that's not relevant.
We're not gonna argue when
It's not relevant to the whole.
The fact of the matter is they have a variance for 4 feet, somehow get 1.5 feet from the property line. We cannot take this building out now. The complaint should have been done then, 1982, but I don't know who owned it. But they can put the second floor without variance. They don't need us for that. We're trying to help you. We help you in the front for take the carport out. We understand it's what you're saying. It's 1.5 feet. You cannot put a ladder without going to your property. They probably have to use a machine that lifts and swing around, and they have to do it that way.
Mr. Chairman,
Anybody else in opposition to this application?
Mr. Chairman, can I speak?
Who's this?
Tim Rosati.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
So I'd just like to bring to the applicant's attention that we're talking about the previous variance that was granted with that stipulation that talked about the adequate buffering of hemlocks or evergreens to be provided. When you get to the point of seeking a permit, if your variance is granted tonight and you move to the next phase of that, part of the conditions of your zoning permit are going to be that approval is going to be comply with your previous approvals and previous variances that was granted. That stipulation is going to be enforced. So that buffering is going to need to be restored at the point when it comes for a final inspection for zoning.
They can't go on a 1.5 foot from the property line.
Right.
You need to follow the 4 feet.
That's why I'm bringing it to your attention now.
My suggestion to you, Mr. Marcus, is if your client want to make a second floor, which, instead of going so tight like that, over that addition you put in 1982 when you have the fire, why don't you make a jog in the second floor and leave that little section up? You still have a big house, and it's good for your home, good for your client, good for a neighbor, good for the association, and we try to keep probably the peace around with everyone. If that can work for you, that's just a suggestion,
Mr. Chairman, again, Neil Marcus for the record. I think that we've heard this. The renovation of the attic, which Karen Taylor was correct. we keep talking about putting on a second floor, actually renovating the act for living space, but it will be a slightly higher roof. It'll go up a couple of feet. There's no question. We're not adding on a complete new story to this building. Now, your suggestion, as usual, has some merit. And though we don't have to change the attic dimensions as they currently exist, we will review with the architect what you've suggested. Can we improve the conditions? And we'll certainly take that into consideration. But for purposes of this evening's variance, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, the permits in 1982 appear to be in order, and they are in the file. Mary and I, as I say, she obtained most of them, gave them to me, and we obtained some of the background history as well. But anyway, what happened in 82 was done with proper permits. I can't explain the 3.5 feet. I can only guess, and no one today can blame it. But quite honestly, I know that the neighbors, Cheryl Dressner, has talked about what a terrible person Sid Klein was. Quite honestly, I would like to finish my presentation. Ms. Spelter, I did not interrupt you during your presentation. There's an order to the way we present.
Yes, let's talk and talking. Please be respectful.
The word bad actors was used a number of times. Well, quite honestly, it's not the Sid Klein I knew, because I knew him back in the 1950s when he was the original group of firemen that built Lake Wabeeka. I no question that Sid has been in this house for all those years. But the real issue is it's irrelevant. It is completely irrelevant. And I think Mr. Ribeiro has kind of hit.
But
the Dressners have made it about the new porch. I haven't heard that. And quite honestly, I can't imagine that anything that they talked about relates to this new porch, or the fact that we want to move the carport back and rebuild it. That was not an issue for them either. Their issue has to do with something that's not before this court. And quite honestly, Tim Rosati, like Sean at the last meeting, Sean explained some of the history of what a zoning non-conformity is after a certain period of years. Tim is correct in his comments that to the extent there was a variance granted in 1982 that required the planting of trees. Well, yeah, interestingly, trees die here. It sounds like somebody actually took them out, because I'm not sure where those trees were actually planted. Quite honestly, as you just said, Mr. Chairman, you got a very small area. Half of those trees might have been on what is now the Dressner property. But be that as it may, Tim is correct. He's going to request, as part of our CO, when we complete this construction, that the landscaping be restored to the satisfaction of the enforcement officer. And we'll do that. And there's an area to plant along the side of the house, and there's an area to plant behind the house. But you can't plant in the 1.5 foot of the
That's right.
But we can do a lot of planting along there to meet what was required.
The question to you, Mr. Marcus, is Tim saying you gotta follow the variance from 1982 if you're gonna put second.
Quite honestly, I don't think like
you breaking up.
I don't think my current clients were aware of those requirements from 40 years ago. Now we are, and there's no problem. To the extent that there were trees that should have been there, they'll be replanted.
No problem. You are willing to go follow the 4 foot variance or no?
Yeah, well, between you and me, we can't move the property line, and we can't cut off the corner of the property. So
you can do second floor. You can leave the first floor, but you can do second floor with a setback. Like you have a jog in the front of the house.
I don't know that I can. Quite honestly, I don't know that I can. However, we're not required to, but I'm going to tell you that the issue has been raised, and we're going to try to see if we can accommodate. I don't know, but otherwise, if we don't get the variance, we are going to build the second floor one way or the other. We're not going to have a new porch, which is a shame. It does improve the front of the house. It makes it a better entry. And we're going to have to rebuild the carport on the existing foundation, which again is a shame because this is a better location. But the Dresters have to understand that we're not here to figure out at this point what happened in 1982 and to blame either Mr. and Mrs. Klein or to blame the city for an error. I mean, I don't know how the building department, the zoning department, this occurred. But the long and the short of it is, it's not. Yeah, excuse me.
I'm gonna ask Tim a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know what the board gonna do with this. We're gonna go, but if he is gonna build second floor, second story in the house, that means he have to go to the 4 feet variance, or
No,
he can.
No, it's a non-conformity, as Sean said at the last meeting. He can go straight up. He just can't, the roof overhang, nothing, no projection from that house can be closer than the 1.6 feet because it's now an existing non-conformity. It's been there that long. No action was taken against it. So it can be continued. They can continue straight up.
And that's why it's probably not likely they could jog it in, because in order to get, you'd have to have some kind of roof runoff and you'd end up with something protruding closer to the property line.
I have a question. Yeah, I have a question too regarding that second story. Looking at the sketches, now they're not to scale yet, are they, Neil? With the sketches that were submitted of the elevations and so forth, the sketches of the new construction.
The drawings that they're giving you are photostatic copies, so the scale is all off on the photocopies. The original
I would be,
architectural.
yeah, I would be curious to know what actual building plans show, because you're actually only raising the roof, half the roof at that, making a shed roof on the back side of the house. And
Correct.
Tony, you're a builder. I don't know how many feet that is. We've speculated somewhere between 15 feet and a couple of feet. So somewhere in the middle is the truth. And I'm just curious where that is. So,
Well, and again, and I sympathize with the situation, but per the building code, there's maximum heights that are allowed for the city standards. A basement is not considered a floor. So as
Correct.
long as it's 50% below grade. So, I mean, and I understand your concerns but the bottom line is that, they don't need us to approve them doing the addition. And the other things that they're asking for a variance are on the opposite side of the property from your house. So I don't think I can't imagine you guys would be opposed to those things, but it's the things you're opposed to, we can't do anything about, unfortunately. So it's not, it is what it is. It's been that way for 40 years. It was that way, when you bought your house, and but it's not even in our privity to do anything with. So that's not what this meeting's about. So
I do have a question to Tim Rosati. Being that it's now just a continued or existing nonconformity, and they can build straight up with the 1982 variance, granted that they do put shrubbery or some sort of buffer, can we as a commission now, and that this would be my question, can we now as a commission amend that to make maybe a fixed fence so we can at least somewhat address the Dressner's concerns about construction work being, exceeding over the property line and so on, and maybe maintain some level of privacy or a boundary as far as the property line continues or is?
I would think if you're applying the rules of today, interpreting what was the intent, it's a view restrictive, year-round thing. So, 40 years ago, we didn't have view restrictive fences like we do now. So yeah, a fence, it's going to be something they don't want to look at their house. So anything a tree is taller, so, you know, that's going to provide more. But if you don't have the room, perhaps a combination of things would work there. You know, a view restrictive fence where it's close, and some plantings where, you know, the space will allow for them, and you'll have a higher amount of cover. It's the intent. The intent is what should be followed.
Yeah, my thing is they exceeded over the 4 feet. I know that we're close to the property line, and I know that this is, again, for the commission, this is a non-issue.
I don't think we should amend it. One, we should not amend it, because leave it the way it is, because we're not going any further with this thing.
I understand, but
We
I'm
just
just
need
throwing
to
that out
respect-
there. I don't know if that was something that's an option, if something that's available. I just wanted to throw it out there. I wanted to ask Tim and clarify with him. I mean, I get it. We're not even here tonight for
We're
that.
just gonna
We're here
work
for the
on.
porch and the carport. I understand.
We're gonna just work on what presented to us, but whatever happened in the past, that's not our business.
It's fine with me.
Okay, any more question from, any more opposition from the public?
Hi, my name is Lois Yeager. I'm the president of the Lake Wabeek Association. And I have a few questions and a few concerns. One, obviously, is the concern that back in 1982, they were granted a 4-foot, you know, to have that 4-foot variance. They violated that. Now it's 18 inches. And, you know, adding another story is exacerbating a situation. And so, you know, obviously, as an association, we have concerns if we have lots that are under this kind of circumstance. We do have small lots. We have more and more people coming in and wanting to expand homes, adding second levels, adding more, you know, really put some huge homes on some small lots. So there is a concern that there are, you know, a lot of this stuff does go back decades. And so, you know, I'd like maybe Mr. Rosati to expand upon, you know, how when they were granted a 4-foot variance, you know, they could go within 4 feet of the property line. They violated that. They went within 18 inches of the property line. And now we're allowing it to be further exacerbated by adding a second story that close to the property line. Like you said, Mr. Rosati, that they would be expected to comply with the variance that was previously granted. The previously granted variance was 4 feet. They violated that. So now we're going to allow them to, you know, further violate that that variance. So that's kind of my first question.
Okay, so I can respond to that. So you're kind of mixing apples and oranges. So, you know, as Attorney Marcus pointed out earlier, and I alluded to, and I don't know if you were, I wasn't here for the last meeting, but, you know, Sean Harrity's the CEO, he covered the last meeting, but he, you know, the whatever happened with the original permitting, you know, there was no as-built that was required as part of that. So that survey, whether it was discrepancy of the property line or how the house was built out, I mean, the house is square at the corner, so it may have been very well a discrepancy of the surveyor from that time, but we will never know because an as-built wasn't taken at that time. The non-conformity of, you know, it became essentially now a pre-existing non-conforming situation that we can't enforce them to, you know, we're not going to force them to move their property line. We're not going to make them move their house at this point. It becomes a pre-existing non-conformity. We're not enforcing that aspect of the variance. It's now been there so long that the structure in relation to the property line is what it is. It cannot be changed. What I'm talking about is the buffering between the property. That was a stipulation that's stated in the variance. That's the part I'm saying that's going to be enforced when it comes time for them to seek a certificate of zoning compliance for the new proposed work that they're installing. I'm asking them to, you know, place that buffering back that was originally stipulated as part of that variance requirement in the original variance.
Okay. Obviously, there's only 18 inches there. I don't know what kind of space that allows to put any kind of buffer, to put a fence, to put trees. So obviously, you know, and there's a stone wall there, and I am glad to hear that Bev or, you know, Lori is willing to, you know, commit to whatever work, you know, if that stone wall is compromised in any way, that Lori has committed to making any necessary repairs to that. You know, that is good news. For the record, this house was not originally owned by Sid Klein. He originally owned a house on Post Road, just for the record. There are a couple other concerns that the community has. And this is related to, I know that, you're looking for a variance on the front for that porch, that expanded front porch. And then also related to the movement of the carport. We always have serious concerns when residents are looking to expand areas of non-permeable surfaces on their property. This is a lakefront property. There's a very small driveway there with a non-permanent carport, which is actually in violation of our rules. It shouldn't have kind of been there, but we can't go back in time. So we do have concerns about runoff from the driveway expansion, hard surfaces, how downspouts are going to be handled, especially on the Dresner's, Cheryl's side of the house, where they can't have any kind of roof overhang there. Because of the property line, and all that drainage, I imagine, from that roof addition would go straight back into the back towards the lake. So that's definitely a concern for us. Some of these concerns may be items that once this variance issue is resolved and the permits are done, the homeowner will still have to come up in front of the Lake Wabeeka board for permission, because there will be impacts to the shoreline. So our jurisdiction kind of supersedes, we say, what can and can't be done on the shoreline of the lake. And so we definitely have some concerns there that we'd want to, work with Lori and her husband on, to possibly have, on that front porch. If you want to put in that front porch, great. Let's make sure that there's some permeable surfaces put in. That front tree was brought up. When I met with Lori, she said they don't want to remove trees as much as possible. I see that the tree that's in question right in the front yard, it's actually, it's already impacted the integrity of the existing driveway. So I'm not sure what that impact is going to be for the new driveway. The existing driveway that's going to be extended is already heaving up because of that tree. And one other thing that had been mentioned is the septic system. So I didn't see anything in the 1982 papers that show that the septic was replaced when the rebuild was done in 82. And so I would have a question as to, is there, and this may be the permitting department, not the zoning, the inspection of the septic system. I know we already talked about that.
That's not in our purview, but it will come up. Yes.
Yeah, no, I know it will come up. So obviously, when we're talking about lakefront, so we have, concerns about this construction. Obviously we're glad that the second carport was removed. We were absolutely we were absolutely opposed to that. And it actually goes against our bylaws that you cannot have, you can only have a home and up to a 2-car garage. So having 2 carports would have been against what we actually have in our deed declaration, not our bylaws. And so, we are concerned with, some of this, once the variance hearing is over, like I said, we would address some of these issues.
Thank you. Anybody else in opposition? All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking ahead about things like air conditioning and things like that. Does the permit department, how does someone get to decide where they're going to put their air conditioning systems? Am I going to have to worry about that being close to my property, or can anybody give me some insight into that and how I should keep an eye on that?
Well, they can't have anything sticking out of the wall, let's say, that goes closer to your property. So
Mr. Marcus can respond to that.
I can take that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, quite honestly, we're looking for a carport and a porch, and neither of them are going to be air conditioned. So we don't have to really worry about it in the confines of this application.
I'm
But-
not asking for the variances. I'm asking for the future, so I can think that I'm gonna be concerned of a rebuild, and I need to know if you put in central air conditioning units, are they gonna be close to my property, and how
Like
does that get resolved?
Like an air conditioned compressor, Mr. Marcus, that the
Yeah,
unit you
there
put
are
outside.
There are setback requirements for air conditioning compressors in the side yard, the rear yard. There is so little space between the Klein house and the Dressner property line that it's unlikely that there would be an air conditioner there. The air conditioning compressor would probably be in the back of the house where there's a lot more area to work with. And there's not much room on the side of the carport either. And usually people don't put compressors in the front of the house because of the streetscape. So I would say that the likely place for any air conditioning compressor is in the rear of the house. And, but you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and again, to the extent that any of the neighbors or the commission want to get involved in some of the details of construction, the Stolowitzes are happy to meet with them, obviously, and to discuss that. But the real question I have this evening for this board is there a serious issue with building a new porch? And is there a serious issue with building this new carport? If there really isn't, all the other issues will be resolved as part of construction, because this ZBA that we're in front of, again, this for the benefit mostly of the neighbors and somewhat of the, to the extent we have the association. The ZBA has a very small impact on this project. It's a finite decision that they have to make. All of the other issues you've talked about are in the hands of the zoning enforcement officer, who's represented here tonight, and has told you what he's going to do to protect the Dressner property. And it's going to be in the hands of the building department, in the engineering department. A lot of that has having to do with the impervious discharge, the discharge of water and the impervious surfaces. So clearly, all of those are addressed, but not by this commission. So, I don't want to, there's been a lot of debate here about issues that are not related. This is a very limited, it was a much broader application 2 weeks ago. We've narrowed it down, gotten rid of things that were really controversial and particularly the second carport. So all I'm asking the commission to do tonight, with the permission of the neighbors, is to focus in on the porch and on the carport, and trust that Tim Rosati will do his job, and if he won't, Sean will. And the environmental issues will be addressed as part of the construction permitting. So it'll happen. And by the way, all of the comments that have been made by the neighbors and the commission itself have been heard by the applicant and will be taken into consideration. These are longtime residents up there, whether they moved from one house to the other house. That's news to me, because I go back a long ways, but I don't go back to 1950. Well, I do go back to 1952. My memory's not that good, but but anyway, I would ask the commission, as usual, to take into consideration the real merits of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more opposition? Okay, any more questions from the board? All right,
Make a motion to close 2203.
any
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now the real hard work.
Appreciate you. Your help.
Hallelujah.
Is that the right
Make
door?
Make a motion to
You-
open
Your-
application 22-03 for voting session or discussion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Tell us what's in your mind now.
Well, I mean, there's a lot been said. Unfortunately, like I say, 90% of, the concerns are strictly to do with the
Yeah,
stuff that has nothing to do with us. So with the things in front of us, I make a motion to approve 2203 11 Jeffrey Street, Stalowitz, Lori, RA 20 zone to reduce the side yard setback from 6 feet to 3 feet on the east side of the proposed detached carport, reduce the side yard setback from 6 feet to 2.5 feet on the west side for detached carport, reduce the front yard setback from 30 feet. Oh, no, that one's out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that one's out. Yeah.
So, to reduce the front yard setback from 30 feet to 18 feet for a front covered porch per plan submitted.
and you might want to add to make sure put the planting on the west side between, as they really want to force the variance from 1982 regarding the greenery.
I'm okay adding that, but I think that's more in
Redundant.
yeah, in the zoning department and zoning enforcements. We're not touching the old thing.
Okay. Any second?
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. All right. We have
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission and neighbors, I appreciate your comments and your time and consideration. And
I
we will
enjoyed your car video.
Did you notice that tonight's meeting started in the parking lot of the Aldridge Museum in Richfield and has ended up in my own living room in Reading? But I wasn't going to miss the meeting, and I couldn't get out of Richfield before 7 o'clock. Thank you for putting up with me.
No problem.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, guys. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you, Joe.